Hello, everyone. You heard me earlier on the week reference that Marshall and I had a debate about Finland and Sweden and NATO. And Marshall and I were talking. We're like, hey, we did a whole realignment episode on this. So we thought that we would just post that entire clip here on the channel, which is part of a much broader episode. Marshall, tell the people where they can find out more if they like the clip.
Yeah, so if you like this clip, and it's a long one, but it's a big debate, like Saagar said, you can go to the links in the show notes and click and go to our channel, see these episodes. We do these discussion episodes where we're debating back and forth. So if you like to see this, lots of great stuff there at the Realignment's YouTube channel. And you can also find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. But hope you enjoy the debate. Would love to hear what you guys think in the comments.
Look, it's a basic fact. Sweden and Finland both been invaded by Russia in the past. They've traded borders for the last 500 years. They're absolutely within the traditional Russian sphere of influence. Let's say that they are going to join NATO. They've said it's by June. Okay, so if he invades them in fucking May, what do we do?
He's not going to invade them.
Well, he might. But how do you know that? You're willing to risk nuclear war based upon that?
I think we're already risking nuclear.
Yeah, I agree. So why would we increase the risk even more so?
Once again,
do you agree that it's going to increase the risk of a nuclear exchange with between the United States and Russia?
No, actually not at all.
Well, I think that's completely ludicrous because let's say that there's a 5% chance. That's way too high. Based upon restoring the integrity of the Finnish border, I'm sorry. I don't care enough about the Finnish border. And look, I like Finland. I've been to Helsinki. It's a beautiful place. They have a distinct culture. Food is terrible. Sorry, Finnish people. That being said, I don't care enough in order to risk the integrity of 400,000 Americans. Let's say it is on the same scale as World War II. No, I don't think it's worth going to war on that whatsoever. Same with Sweden. Sorry, Sweden, great country. We have long cultural alignment.
They're EU member already.
I don't care. We belong to the EU.
But this is my point, though. Like, how is this actually? But this is my point, which is that like.
Okay, then France and the UK are welcome to go in to do that. Okay, I would still not support it, especially under the auspices of NATO. But if they care that much, if France, Germany, and the UK want to defend the territorial integrity of the European Union, they are welcome to do so. And if Sweden and Finland were invaded by Russia, I would support the similar level of weapons that we're transferring to Ukraine to both of those countries. I think that guaranteeing their territorial integrity is important up to a point. I do not think that point means giving them Article 5 nuclear umbrella protection. And NATO expansion is very clear as having been a specific part of why we are where we are today. Putin is the main reason why Ukraine got invaded. No dispute whatsoever. A lot of this was predicted, though, since the early 1990s as to how this would create an environment through which such thing could happen. I want to reduce the risk of nuclear war. And also, I just think the idea that we would have to go to war again in order to solve these problems of the bickering old world is ridiculous. Sweden and Finland's territorial integrity has zero impact on the future of the United States, its GDP, and its trading relationship with the rest of the world, specifically Asia. So I'm just of the opinion, well, I already know I lost, so it doesn't really matter. Like, I know that hopefully you don't have to play this clip in 25 years, as there was at least one guy saying it, like one of those people. I already know I lost. I know that the fucking Senate will just rubber stamp this without any debate, but there should be a real debate. There wasn't a debate about the Baltics. There should have been a debate about the Baltics. People should have listened to George Kennan. Nobody listened, and I'm not saying John Mearsheimer's doing himself any favors right now by downplaying.
Explain what he's doing.
John Mearsheimer's a realist scholar, but right now he's been giving interviews where he's like trying to downplay Russian war crimes, and this is what always my message to the realists.
Why do that? Because we're arguing, I need to offer you a compliment. I appreciate. And it's already have a good conversation. You have your take. You don't do this weird gray zone thing where, where they're like, we argue against NATO expansion, but also everything you see is happening is a U.S. imperialist lie. Like, what does that possibly accomplish?
I don't know. It doesn't accomplish anything. Look, a lot of these guys are just so black-pilled, they're unable to see, like, ironically, the gray area. So, like,
he said it.
What I would say is that, look, I think, and this is why I think emotion is very much on the side of these people, but emotion is what gets people into wars and has for a long time. I mean, look, the territorial integrity of Sweden and Finland, I would support, and this is the other thing about gradations. You can support somebody without offering them nuclear protection. Why can't we just do that? Yeah, we support you. We're not going to offer you a nuclear umbrella. And if Putin was really going to invade, even given the current circumstance and how much he's getting his ass kicked in Ukraine and given the backlash of the world, well, okay, then that's just going to happen. And I hate to say it. And Sweden, Finland, it's a roll of the dice in terms of where you get born and in terms of the power and all that you have. And it sounds really sad in order to say, but the world is not the place where the United States guarantee the territorial integrity of these places. So I look at this, I see it invites a gray area conflict, very much so. Invasion, possibly a coup, assassination, all kinds of gray zone type conflicts, which very much that we could then test real red lines. So, for example, let's say they assassinate or pull off a political coup in Sweden. What do we do? I mean, what do we do about that? Like, that's not something that's in the playbook.
The thing is,
and that's why we should reduce the number of countries to which we have to make existential decisions on.
But this is where our disagreement fundamentally comes down to, which is the only countries that Putin does gray zone activities are non-NATO countries.
For now.
No,
but for now.
But forever.
Well,
that's the
okay.
So
he's only been in power for 25 years.
You took this guy's old, so
yeah.
What I will say though is, look, you took a risk before the invasion. You said you didn't think it was going to happen.
Sure.
I'll take my risk. He's not going to invade Sweden.
Okay, but your risk risks nuclear war. My risk just makes me look like a fucking moron on the internet, right? That's the difference.
But here's the thing, like. Putin invaded and still threatened nuclear war. So like it's this.
Yeah, but Ukraine's not in NATO. If he does in Sweden, that's an actual red line. Like then we literally have to have a nuclear exchange. I don't want to do that.
Why would he? And I see where you got in trouble on Ukraine as I'm saying these things. Why would he possibly invade Sweden?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I don't think. I mean, it's not rational in order to invade Ukraine either. But like,
it actually was.
No, really.
No, it actually no.
Wait.
Under your argument, it actually was quite rational because his argument, if we're taking him serious to some degree, was that like Ukraine represents an existential security threat to Russia.
Well, wait. B, they've said the same thing about Sweden and Finland. So if he's done it once, we should probably take it seriously.
Again, as we all know, like the Ukraine has a different relationship to Russia in Putin's eyes than Sweden and Finland do. For example. Oh, and this when we go back to
this also applies to the Baltics, which are in fucking NATO.
Well, no, but it's different. So let me give a quick example of this. So this is what's hard, right? Because I'm sure this has been a frustration for you over the past month. We're pundits, right? So we're not policymakers. Like the only thing that matters what we say is whether we get dunked on or people send us some money or not. I think that what Putin is doing in Ukraine is culturally genocidal. Now, I don't think the U.S. government should be saying that, but when he says, under the articulation of what genocide represents, when he says Ukraine does not exist, when his literal intellectuals who write and support his projects say we want to abolish the existence of this thing, it's all fake, the language that is a genocidal project. The project of erasure is genocidal. So all my point is that reflects the fact that he thinks that it's not a real country. Finland, Sweden, the Baltics, those are real countries. He has a fundamentally different relationship with them.
Maybe. I mean, look, again, maybe. The risk of if you're wrong is a nuclear exchange, and that's just too high of a risk in order for me to go about that. And look, like I said, at the end of the day, if a traditional deterrence of being a non-NATO aligned country within the European Union isn't enough to stop the invasion, then it wasn't worth it in the first place. And if 100 million of our citizens died because Stockholm fell to the Russians, I think that's crazy. I just think that's completely crazy. Look, it's worth it for London. It's worth it for Paris. It's just simply not worth it for Helsinki and for Sweden.
Wait, but
we made these calls 70 years ago.
But as you just acknowledged, and this is where I'll ask you a history question. I'm sad you couldn't make the JFK episode because we're both huge fans of Fred Logevall. If in a world where Putin moved beyond an Eastern European country and invaded Finland and Sweden, even in May, Paris, London, they get entangled very quickly.
Okay.
So
let them take the lead.
But you said it's worth risking for them.
Well,
so let me make the broader point I'm trying to make, right? So we both like World War I, World War II. A takeaway that I have from World War I and World War II is that it's impossible, given the nature of just the world, Western culture, trade, etc., to treat Europe is just a petri dish. So we could say to ourselves, look, we're in the US, we're positioned between the Atlantic and the Pacific, we're trying to be interested in other places. Let the Europeans fight. We tried that twice. Both times we were pulled in. So my assumption this isn't a recommendation. So look, I would believe we should intervene in that case, but this is not, I'm not making a policy judgment here. I am saying my lesson from the 20th century is when European countries have a huge bloody war together, we are pulled in very quickly.
Yeah, but the circumstances in which we should get pulled in are important. For example, it was important that Britain enter World War I in order to defend the territorial integrity of Belgium, and not because of the Entente Triple Alliance system, which made it so that there were major tripwires. It actually got buy-in from the civilian population of the UK. And remember, we live in a democracy, so it's going to be the similar circumstance. It was also important that we don't enter World War II until we get literally bombed in Pearl Harbor. The tripwire of NATO means we do go to war for the territorial integrity of Sweden. That's not worth it. Now, if the UK and France and them get embroiled into a war with Russia, and Russia risks the territorial integrity of our long-standing cultural nations going back 250 years to which we owe the existence of our country, then yeah, that's worth risking the war for. The circumstances under which you get pulled in matter a lot. It was important that the UK get brought into World War I for a good moral reason that the population could get behind. Because actually what you're risking otherwise is that Sweden does get invaded, and then it actually comes down to a real conversation here in the US and say, no, we're not going to do it. Because now you put your actual in question whether they would go to war for London or for Paris. Those are ironclad. That's in the blood right now. That's not the case. I mean, that's also why I think the fact that North Macedonia is in NATO is crazy. Same with Montenegro. Nobody knows where the fuck Montenegro is. Like, the idea that those countries deserve the ability for the full martial power of the United States government and its economic system and its civilian population to live once again under a ration system and a de facto authoritarian state, that should be a rare circumstance, and that's why
peace in Europe for the
it
first
doesn't
time
matter.
No.
This is where it just sounds trite. Like, look, peace in Europe to me means peace in Western Europe, and like, look, sorry, Eastern Europe, like, it's just true.
Why?
Pardon?
Why?
I mean, it's just, that's exactly like whenever we look at where the major conflagrations come, it's whenever those countries which we're traditionally, culturally, and politically aligned with, those are the ones that we get embroiled on behalf of. We don't.
World War I started in the Balkans.
Yeah, okay, and we didn't go to war over Balkans. We went to war in 1918.
But
this gets to my circumstance. Why did we go to war? Well, first of all, the circumstances which we entered were suspect, kind of, in World War I. And the reason why we ultimately went to war in World War I was because the German Empire was firing upon our civilian ships in the Atlantic Ocean. That's a direct threat to the interests of the United States while it's trying to conduct its business on our side of the border, so to speak. Now, should the tripwire of that existed for the Balkans? No, I think it's crazy. Like, should we have gone to war over the Archduke Ferdinand? No. Do I understand why Austria-Hungary went to war, and Serbia, and Russia, and the German Empire, and to a certain extent the French, because they didn't really have a choice. They got invaded by the Germans and all that. Yeah, I get that. That's completely makes sense. This is why I think the circumstances. So even if we do get pulled in, you should get pulled in for the right reason. That's not a good enough argument for why you should get automatically pulled in, because I truly believe it would be a massive political threat to the actual integrity of NATO, because I think there's a high chance that we wouldn't actually follow through on that.
To sum up our argument, because we've gone a bunch of places, my position is basically that Europe going to war is a disaster, and the fact that it no longer goes to war is an accomplishment of U.S. engagement post-World War II. A big mistake we made after World War I was retreating from the continent under the belief that we could be isolated from them. And secondly, just because I want to just sum up the positions for folks, because people are going to, I'm not quite sure how it's going to split in the comments section, but my position is as follows. NATO countries create conditions for peace. You're right, and that's a good articulation, that we wouldn't want a world where a war starts in the Balkans, and therefore we have to tripwire intervene. My point is U.S. policy and NATO policy should be to set the conditions by which war does not actually occur. My take here is there's a reason why Putin has invaded Ukraine and Georgia. It's because they're non-NATO countries. I think, especially given how terribly his military has performed, there's a very, very low chance that he would actually go into a NATO country. And frankly, I just think a world where he invades Sweden and Finland is actually such a war and such a crazy world that we would have to get pulled into that war no matter what, either way.
I'd rather get pulled in kicking and screaming than have to go in on day one. That's my response.
But if you get pulled in kicking and screaming, the question is, how do you get pulled in? I guess that's a good way of distinguishing them, because my take is we should not have to be pulled in the first place by setting conditions so war doesn't occur.
Well, war is inevitable. It happens all the time, as we've learned.
Wait. Why is war inevitable?
Well, we lived through 70 years of like relative peace in the continent. You just said 1,000 years of which they fight. Like, I think it's relatively inevitable.
But they stopped fighting.
Yeah, for a tiny period sliver of time.
But it's not just like a tiny sliver. They stopped fighting because the U.S. placed a humongous commitment.
Sure.
Risking nuclear war, to your point.
Right.
And
specific borders.
But a quick thing. Placed U.S. troops there. Also built up institutions that enabled the settling of, like, for example, like, all people love when we make Alsace-Lorraine references.
Oh, yeah.
There's like, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name on YouTube. This guy was like, "Yo!" They said
Alsace?
it's actually really there's like there's probably some weird World War I hobbyist who listens. But basically, so this is a shout out to you, homie. But the quick point here is, they fought over Alsace-Lorraine for like 500 years. They stopped, and it's never going to happen again. It is never going to happen again because the Europeans, under U.S. military protectorship, created the European Coal and Steel Community that became the European Union. Yes, like, there's the whole Brexit discussion. Easily in the 2010s, the EU went too far. But at a core level, the idea is, hey, like, let's build a new Europe. And that's been accomplished, and that's been built not because of inevitabilism. Because I think, frankly, if the U.S. had gone home after World War II, yeah, there would have been another war. Almost certainly.
Yeah, but we didn't do the similar in Eastern Europe, and nor should we. I don't think that we should.
I think that's the new Europe.
Why? What's the point? The Eastern Europe has a GDP the size of like Texas. These are not places where there are massive strategic. Actually, Texas probably has a bigger GDP than all of those countries put together in terms of our trading relationship too. Nothing. Russia's interest in that place way bigger in terms of its actual ambition, in terms of its trading relationship, cultural ties, all of this. I'm just sorry. Like, look, I mean this very clearly. I feel bad for them. I think that we should support them. That does not mean that we should risk going to war for them. If we did get pulled in, the circumstances under which I would protest up until the time that they actually crossed a true red line in terms of cultural and economic importance to the United States. And I don't think Eastern Europe has literally anything to do with that.
How do you determine, this is just a genuine interview question, how do you define, and this is actually kind of away from even the Ukraine NATO debate, how do you define cultural importance? Like, for example, I think of Nokia, IKEA, right?
Sure.
Like, so what's your definition? I'm just curious, like, why do we have cultural significance with let's say Germany, Paris, Spain, and not Finland?
Well, Germany's a more recent addition, but Paris, we literally wouldn't be a country without Paris.
Why can't we add Finland and Sweden to that addition?
Because Sweden wasn't there in 1780 whatever at the Battle of
Germany
Yorktown.
Wasn't a country until 1871.
Yeah, and we literally built it up from the ground after we had to conquer it and occupy it for 10 years. I don't really want to do that for Sweden or for Finland. I mean, and this is the point too with London. We have we're literally an Anglo country whenever it comes to them. Whenever it comes to the French, we wouldn't exist without them. We've gone to war on their behalf. We fought, we're literal blood brothers in 2 different world wars, and we liberated their country by blood, by our soldiers. We don't have the same level of commitment, and nor should we, in terms of our ties with the Eastern European countries. This is why, look, in terms cultural importance does matter. Like, the Baltics are much more important to the Russians than it is to us. That's why I think it's crazy that they have a nuclear umbrella by the United States. Same with Poland. I like Poland. I've been to Poland. I feel really bad for them. I've been to the Warsaw Museum and all that. I don't think that Warsaw should have a nuclear umbrella from the U.S. either. Like, this is the point. When these countries have been invaded multiple times and fought over and scrapped over by those specific instances, this is exactly the circumstance in which you want to avoid having to actually go to bring the full force of U.S. military economic power in order to defend it. Now, maybe we have to get dragged in anyways once one of our actual red lines gets crossed. Fine. But I actually think that's better because there's much more democratic buy-in. There's an actual red line that has been crossed. And instead of this inevitabilist argument, I think the history of conflict is one that if you go in with the mixed population response, as we did in World War I, then you get 30 years of isolationism. I mean, you deserve it. I mean, same with Iraq. You go in under dubious circumstances and you sell a lie. What happens? People who are my age don't trust a goddamn word that the government says. That's why I was wrong about Ukraine. And, I don't really regret that mindset. I honestly don't, because it came from a place of watching the U.S. military lie to me about Iraq and Afghanistan for 20 years. That's what the Afghan withdrawal taught me. I was like, I don't believe a fucking word that you people say, ever. I probably still will be skeptical for the rest of my life. That's the point, which is that when you go in under these types of circumstance, you're responsible then for the actual democratic pushback. We don't live in an autocracy. So that's why, look, I'm so vehemently against this, and watching it happen it makes me sick. Like I can see it all coming from a mile away.
And this is interesting, do you think the issue is that Putin has just been so bad in Ukraine that it's made it harder for your side to make the argument?
I do.
Tell me
more. You know who I think the elites are acting like right now? I think they're acting like Hitler in 1940. Hitler, 1940, pre-Operation Barbarossa. He said, look at these people. They can't even beat the Finns. 100,000 of them? They're garbage. We can take Moscow in a day. We're not like Napoleon. We have mechanized warfare. Look at these backward Russians. They're such a joke. Blah, blah, blah. What happens? 700,000 Germans die on the Eastern Front. And the Soviets literally sacrificed.
But that's launching an invasion.
Okay, but my point is that they underestimated Soviet power.
But once again, we're not
we are underestimating Soviet power. Absolutely.
Underestimating Russian power would mean us saying, wow, actually, let's stick with the metaphor. And this would require Putin's not psychotic, but paranoid mentality to be accurate. If this were 1940 and we're Hitler in this example, the West would say, well, actually, this is good. For the Star Trek fans, I know you guys like my Star Trek ships I usually have. So Mirror Universe. There's Mirror Universe Joe Biden. He's got a pointy beard like Spock. Mirror Universe Biden says, oh, wow, I want regime change. Russia's army is proven weak. We are going to invade now. Now is the point. The rotted husk of Russia is ripe for the taking. But we're not actually doing that.
No, but we're risking confrontation with that nation. And a lot of this, as you just said, is, look at how Putin is doing in Ukraine. Look, I'm not saying it's not a data point.
To be correct, it's look at how Putin's offensive capability
looks.
But
look, once again, offense becomes defense real quick if you act in the wrong direction, and the next thing you know, you get embroiled in a situation. Cuban Missile Crisis. What happened? 1962. One of our guys gets shot down. It's luck that we did not go to war over that. And it was only because of the genius of Robert McNamara and of John F. Kennedy that all of us are alive right now. But I don't want to live in that situation.
But that's a case where we are intervening.
What do you mean?
In that case, we were saying we want
and if we're in NATO, then you think that we're not going to have NATO overflight of the Swedish border then? What happens? One guy goes 10 feet over the wrong border and gets shot down. What's going to happen?
Overflights of Russia.
No, we don't. No, we actually don't do that.
Wait. The U.S. already has a border of Russia, like up in like the Alaska Strait. Like, I don't understand what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that in NATO, if Sweden, Finland, and them get embroiled in NATO, and then there's some cross-border conflict, do you really want that to possibly escalate to a nuclear confrontation? I don't, especially given the history of all those nations that are involved there. Same with the Baltics. This is the one nobody can answer. And look, I already know I'm going to get a ton of hate from the Swedes and from the Finns. I'm sorry. Like, if I was you, I would want to join NATO too. I would also be scared, but I'm not you. Like, we have to look out for our interests and our country.
But my argument is our interest is no war in Europe.
Maybe, but yeah, I mean, no.
It's not a coincidence that the most prosperous time in human history has occurred when Europe stopped fighting.
If Stockholm got invaded and we had to go to a full-blown war over that, I don't think it's worth it whatsoever. And I think it has major democratic legitimacy.
That's a different argument. What I am arguing is we have an interest in Europe being at peace.
Okay, yeah, I think we do. Interests get balanced.
Do we have an interest do we have an interest? So, for example, you're saying like we shouldn't back Poland. I don't think if we didn't back Poland would develop nuclear weapons. I don't think we have an interest in that.
Well, again, all interests have to get balanced. Like, we don't have interests. We have an interest up until a certain point, and it has to get balanced in the nuclear age with nuclear exchange. That's the other thing. I think there's a lot of 20th century thinking that's happening here in terms of what exactly these things mean. It used to be that the cost was, the horrific cost of World War II was, 56 million, I think, at the highest count. That's in an hour. That possibly double, triple. In an actual exchange. They say North Korea's nukes could kill 23 million in a single day. That's the shittiest nuke on the planet. And it could wipe out, half the city or half the population of California. Like, these are scales of which we have not adjusted to. I honestly feel like we're back in 1955 or 1957 when all of the nuclear taboos were not on the table, and it's all like Kissinger being like, maybe we should use tactical nukes in Vietnam, or whenever they were like, hey, Eisenhower, you should use a tactical nuke at Dien Bien Phu or at the Suez Canal in order to defend the French and the British. Like, it feels like that level of stuff is back on the table, especially when we talk about Sweden.
Wait, from who?
Pardon?
But once again, this is why I'm like...
No, if no-fly zone... Sweden and Finland in NATO, as you know, would be an absolute zero, non-negotiator, even in, 1992? Like, it was completely off the table.
Here's my big question. Why do you think Putin would invade Sweden and Finland? Because, by the way, like, the thing...
No, I don't, actually. I don't think that he would. But I think that there's a 15 to 20% chance that he would. So that means 80% no, and 20% is high enough for me to be like, no, it's not worth it.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing, and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.